Could the very real zombie fungus fictionalised in The Last of Us actually mutate to be able to infect humans and cause a zombie apocalypse? Well, there's good news. And there's bad news. Cordyceps are parasitic fungi that spread their fibre-like mycelia through the body of their insect or spider victim, consuming it from the inside out before one or more fruiting bodies erupts from the host's dead body. From this, spores will be released in order to float on the wind and eventually infect another insect host. But some species are even more metal, such as the famous species that takes over the mind and body of carpenter ants, forcing the host to stumble its way towards the ideal place to sprout the fruiting body. That's high enough to be able to spread its spores across as wide an area as possible, but also low enough to the ground to still have plenty of moisture. You may be wondering why the fungus doesn't just send an ant to go straight to the ant's nest, blow it up with spores, and infect the entire colony. Well, this is partly because it wouldn't do much good for the fungus to wipe out all potential hosts at once, but also because of one of the many amazing examples of ants' dedication to their colony. They can smell an infected ant, and if cleaning the ant doesn't work, they will carry that twitchy time bomb away from the nest and unceremoniously dump it far away to die. That's why Cordyceps has to get a host ant to leave the colony. But this is how cunning the fungus is. Some zombie ants position themselves just above an ant pathway so that it can rain down spores on commuting ants like some kind of ceiling ninja. So how do Cordyceps control their host behaviour? It's not entirely understood, but it appears to be a combination of, in part, releasing molecules that interfere with the ant's nervous system, including the brain, affecting its behaviour. If that sounds far-fetched, remember that some mushrooms contain psychoactive drugs that even make large animals like humans hallucinate. What seems even more spectacular, in my opinion, is that some cordyceps also appear to grow their fibrous mycelia around and even into muscles and control them directly, like some kind of janky mech suit. So could one of these fungus species affect humans? It's very, very unlikely, because it would have to mutate a lot. Plenty of animal pathogens have mutated and become infectious to humans, like HIV, and they haven't necessarily had to change much because on a cellular level, there is a lot in common between human hosts and other mammals, and even birds. Sometimes a virus needs to mutate just a single surface protein responsible for binding to a host cell. But there are a lot more differences between insects and humans. For starters, Cordyceps simply couldn't survive at mammalian body temperatures, nor could it digest human tissue for nutrients. In fact, most Cordyceps are so choosy that they infect just a single insect species. So the chances of zombie Cordyceps mutating to affect humans is as likely as rabbits mutating into murder bunnies. However, we're far from being able to relax about fungi. There are some common fungi that can infect humans, usually only infecting our consistently damp surfaces. And if they do pass into the interior, for example through the lungs or through a puncture wound, and survive the human body temperature, our immune system recognises them as dangerous and attacks them. And part of our body's defence against infection is fever, making the body temperature even less hospitable for the fungus. However, people with compromised immune systems, like the ill and the old, are at risk of an otherwise mild infection becoming deadly. But even for healthy people, there are still 3 reasons why you should be at least somewhat worried. The World Health Organization certainly is. In 2022, for the first time ever, they published a list of priority fungal infections that require urgent research and efforts to prevent outbreaks. Because 1, these sometimes deadly fungal infections are increasingly common. 2,
and there are no treatments for this, no preventatives, no cures. They don't exist. It's not even possible to make them.
Not quite true, but unlike bacteria treatments, there are not many antifungal medicines, and strains of fungi resistant to those medicines are also becoming more common. And 3, tests for diagnosing fungal infections are not as quick or as available as most bacterial or viral tests. At the moment, fungal infections kill at least 1.6 million people per year. And that looks set to increase. There are some horrendous fungal infections that can infect healthy people. Some are tropical fungi that get into a human from a prick by a thorn that had the fungus on it, and I'm sure that those particular infections must have inspired some of the imagery that the makeup artists in The Last of Us have come up with. Fortunately, these ones aren't usually fatal, but they can take years of treatment and sometimes amputation. But remember, these are tropical fungi, so the rest of the world doesn't need to worry. It's not like the world is getting warmer or anything. Oh. On a lighter final note, cordyceps is not only harmless to humans, but some species have been eaten as a traditional medicine for thousands of years. Which is why I encourage you to buy Johnny's Zombie Coffee, because the only things that should be coming out of your brain are ideas, not mushrooms. Just kidding, there are some potential benefits to cordyceps, but there's no convincing evidence yet of anything particularly interesting or special about them compared to your average supermarket mushrooms. Now, there is a parasite that does manipulate human behaviour by making us more likely to take risks and get involved in serious accidents. If you'd like to see a video on that, then comment below. And if you'd like to learn more about nature, both inside and out, make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any upcoming videos. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.